All right, everyone, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today for another SMITH.AI Master Series webinar. I am Maddy Martin. I am the VP of Marketing at SMITH.AI. And if you don't already know who we are a 24/7 virtual receptionist service providing call answering, outbound calls, live website chat and chat bots, text answering and Facebook Messenger, so that we can free up small business owners' time, energy, and money to be best spent on the most important things and not on the front line, which we can capably handle for you. So we work 24/7 in English and Spanish, handling a lot more than calls and chats, but also intake scheduling, form completions, payments, and a whole lot more, including free spam blocking. So I hope that you'll learn more about SMITH.AI if you're watching this and you're not already a fan. But today's topic is really centered on how we support our small business owner clients through additional educational classes and learning opportunities. And today we're talking with Adam Steele of Loganics, and we are going to be discussing how to build products and operations that enable them to scale. So if you are looking at ways to create digital products and services, that's a fantastic launching pad oftentimes, but it can be a little bit murky to figure out, well, how do I really make this into a system? How do I make it into recurring revenue? How do I grow my maybe small business to the next level and scale without having the whole burden be on yourself on creating new things all the time? How do you leverage what exists and standards and processes to make sure that you have every checklist, every tool in place, so the burden is not completely on you for scaling every inch of your operation, from the ground up, from scratch. So Adam, really great to have you here. Can you just introduce yourself and a little bit about your background and history with Loganics?
Sure. Thank you, Maddy. Thank you for having me. Thank you, SMITH.AI, for having me again. And I will just very quickly share my screen because I think that might be helpful. I believe I'm doing this correctly. There we go. Brilliant. Share. I'm getting the hang of this. Cool. As you mentioned, my name is Adam Steele, and I've been in the digital marketing space since 2010, selling digital products and services, well, since 2010 as well. And today we work with agencies and in-house teams, which means we work with generally SEO teams or agencies, and in the in-house teams of other companies, all kinds of different companies, SaaS companies, SMB companies, big Fortune 500 type companies that have marketing teams already, and they just want to outsource a piece of the SEO puzzle, be it link building or submitting to local business directories or content production or things like that. Loganics has existed since 2010, give or take, and yeah, we started, and this kind of leads nicely into our topic. We started as a seller of email addresses. We would create email addresses for folks that needed that sort of thing, and this was sort of a bit of the shady days of the internet, but there were folks that needed email addresses, and as our first service, I created those email addresses for folks and I shipped them to those folks. And I did so for, I think it was $1 an email address or something to that effect. And that was our first digital product back in 2010. And today we do a whole heck of a lot more, like, as I mentioned, link building and citation building and content production, all that kind of thing. But it all started with a very humble email address creation on a internet marketing forum. And that's where we begun.
Very cool. So yeah, let's, you're the best person who's basically drinking the Kool-Aid and selling the Kool-Aid too, right? I mean, there's no better experience than doing it yourself. So can we just talk first about the concept? We know SaaS, software as a service, but what is SAAP, services as a product? Can you walk us through the definition there?
Sure. And I think maybe it's best I just probably not totally necessary that I share my screen all the way through. So I'm just going to, did I kill that? No, I didn't. Pause share. How's that?
You're fine.
Perfect.
Just stop sharing. Yep.
All right, cool. So, I mean, I kind of made software as a product up and like a couple of weeks before this call. So I don't know whether it makes sense or not, but we, instead of sort of software as a service, which is what most folks, understand, software as a product is essentially taking a service and packaging it up as a sort of one-off type product. So it's not an ongoing type of thing. It's just a one-time deal. It sometimes can turn around in hours. Sometimes it can turn around in a day, sometimes a little bit more. And it's us performing a service, but shipping it as a product and selling it within sort of the environment that you might be used to for software as a service. So in a dashboard, and it's totally a la carte. You come in, you order it, you pay through Stripe or what have you, and everything is very software as a service. But it, as I mentioned, it's a product. It's one off. There's no recurring. Well, I'll give you a perfect example. One of our oldest products is the citation audit, which basically is an audit of the instances of your business name, address, and phone number online. It's a product to do with local search. And essentially, you would submit various inputs. We would take those inputs, we would scour the internet as a service, put it all in a spreadsheet, explain what you're looking at, and send it off. Send off that report via email, and there you have it. In 24 hours, you have your product delivered in your dashboard, and that's kind of what that looks like. And that's when I say software or a service as a product. That's what I mean. It's a service, but packaged like a product.
And also, I think there's, a concept when we think about the word product as something that is repeatable, it is concrete, it is something that doesn't have a whole lot of variability, right? Like if I think about my mouse as a product, I know how it's going to work every single time. And I think that one of the reasons why we have trouble valuing our services and why it's easier sometimes to think about them as products is if we can define their feature set more clearly, if we can deliver on them consistently over time, then defining them as a product becomes easier. So what are the components that you need to account for if you're thinking about taking your own services and productizing them?
Well, goodness, you actually made some terrific points there. It's just like you said, it's got to be something that can be counted on to be the exact same every single time. And as an agency owner, which tend to be our customers, they're selling these products to their customers, or it's a part of the greater piece of the puzzle, or the greater pie or puzzle that they're selling to their customers. And so their team is expecting it to be exactly the same every time, or else that puzzle piece does not fit and everything falls apart, or their customer doesn't get what they're used to. And now they have to re-explain why, what is new about it, what now they have to understand about it. And things like turnaround time, that has to be the same, because the customer on the other end, their systems only work if they can rely on me and my team delivering at the exact same time every single time. If we deliver late, then all of a sudden that other team member in the in the sort of relay team, that the baton's not coming to them on time. What do? Right? They're not able to continue. And so they're stumped, and all of a sudden you create sort of a break in their process. And there's no reason for them to keep you around if you're constantly creating problems in their systems, because these things only work if the systems themselves work. So so certainly repeatability, consistency are really, really, really important. Your customer understanding exactly what they're going to get every single time is really, really important. And as we will talk about later on, this is only possible. It's only been possible to have produced tens of thousands of these audits over the years because we have SOPs that help us do the same thing over and over and over again. And that's one part of the puzzle. You also need a team members that are willing to work and do the same thing over and over again. And that's
key, right?
Yeah.
And hiring for that is important, because someone who has maybe a high degree of creativity is not going to be the best person to execute in that role. They might expand upon the product, but they might not execute on it as it currently stands. And the example that comes to mind for me, I'm sure that I could use the example of McDonald's, right? You want the same burger every time, and frankly, there's a lot of service that goes into that food item. We'll call it a product that gets delivered to you. But think about maybe Instacart as a better example. So if you are working with a lot of different grocery stores, it's a lot harder to control the item quality, let's say. The shoppers are variable. So when we think later, we're going to discuss standard operating procedures and methodologies, and how to maybe key into status updates of that product sort of delivery timeline, which Instacart does very well. No matter what store you've chosen or what shopper is assigned to you, it is a seamless experience wherever you are, if I'm the buyer or if you're the buyer across the North America, right?
Yeah,
So,
not to take this off track, but I think your McDonald's example is actually the better example of the two. And it could just be because here in Canada, our Instacart experience isn't the exact same every time. And there is quite a bit of variability. And it's maybe, they've been running in Canada for a little bit less time than perhaps they have in the United States. But McDonald's, I think, we all understand that the food isn't all that great. But we, at least for me anyways, I know that I'm going to be able to get the exact same thing every single time. I know it's going to taste the exact same. I know it's going to arrive the same way. It's going to, via, Uber or what have you. I know exactly what I'm getting. I remember my last experience and I know it's going to be exactly the same. And there is a value to that beyond the ingredients that go into it, beyond how it tastes. There's something about that sort of reliability that keeps people coming back, I believe. And I think McDonald's is sort of the best example of that, and probably the longest running example of that.
Yeah, no, totally. Well, it's been highlighted in many a case study for businesses. So I'm happy to sort of pull on that example again. So when we think about what are the different business types that can leverage this service as a product, and is it already sort of lurking within what you're already doing? Like, where do you see these products bubbling up in other businesses like yours or not like yours?
I'm not sure I'm going to be able to come up with any on the fly. I'm thinking of my mom's business. She's owns an auto glass repair shop. And so I'm thinking, how could she put together some sort of service as a product and
Maybe
do so in
checklist or a glass health sort of
when I think of it, I'm sort of putting it in a digital sort of casing. So I'm thinking, what kind of digital product can she put together? And I don't know how one does that exactly in her industry. It might be, You take a picture of the issue, you send the issue in, and you're right, perhaps she puts together an audit and she has a team member that's able to provide a quote for that chip, for that type, make, model of vehicle, and able to send it back within, a few hours. So instead of going to the shop only to find out that this, it's not, you're not going to pay $50 to have a chip filled in. You're going to pay $1,200 to have a new windshield put in. And,
Right.
It's kind of an uncomfortable truth to find out. Same when you bring your car in, and all of a sudden what you thought was just replacing the brake pads, and now you have to do this, that, and the other. And all of a sudden you're out, $2-3 grand. That's uncomfortable. And you're in front of the clerk and you're like, you feel inclined to now pay it because they're thinking, you're worried about what they're thinking. You're worried about your vehicle, and it's
but there is
uncomfortable.
the assumption that you're speaking with that repair shop that went through a process, right? So then again, we're getting back to that, productizing, where it really hinges upon everyone following that protocol in order to get to, that point where it is repeatable, it is expected and justifiable, and then you arrive at a certain result.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's all born in checklists. I read this great book, and I don't remember the author, but it was all about checklists. I wish I could figure it out.
Manifesto.
Yes, that is a beautiful
by the doctor,
book.
right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
I believe he
fantastic book.
was a surgeon or something.
Yep.
And it just made me realize that it doesn't matter how fancy your business, how high impact, it doesn't matter. Every business of all types, no matter the education, requires checklists, whether you're a pilot, whether you're a surgeon, whether it doesn't matter. And it sort of reinforced my thinking about the importance of checklists and making checklists for absolutely everything.
So how do you sort of deconstruct and then reconstruct things into what ends up being a product? Can you walk us through a little bit of your own experience there, and maybe with the citations product or another one, how that was deconstructed and then reconstructed if it had to be to become a product?
Sure. I think perhaps the best example was our SEO audit. And so previously we were offering custom audits, very complicated things to our customers. They'd come in, we would quote them, a unique price every single time. It would be a unique effort every single time. And it was complicated, and it took a lot more time than it should to assess websites that, 95% of them all looked the same. That is, they were small, medium-sized businesses, maybe a little bit on the smaller side. They had, between 10 and 20 pages on their website, maybe a blog, but they were mostly the same. And yet we felt the need that to do everything so custom. And we thought we were doing them a favor, or not a favor, but we thought that we were doing them justice by being super custom and making things just for them. But it turns out that customization created a lot of variability. And that variability was often our downfall when it came to delivering. And so what we ended up doing was polling those folks that were receiving those audits and just, figure out what they were thinking. Instead of, oftentimes in the past, what I've done is I've kind of come up with these products myself without consulting our customers. And a lot of times it's just for expediency. But, a Google form doesn't take all that long to build. Send it out to your customers, incentivize them with something for free, just for 5 minutes, 10 minutes of their time. Make sure your questions are really good, because that's often the downfall of those questionnaires is creating these very general, very broad questions. They should be quite specific, I found. Anyways, so what it turned out that what folks wanted was something scaled back, something more simple, something that was more cost effective, something that delivered more quickly. All things that could be accomplished if we systematized everything and if we basically just made a template, and it would look the exact same thing, same every time. And yes, there's still lots of brain power behind it. So it's not, all done, by robots and whatnot. There still is human beings behind it, but they follow a procedure and they have a checklist, and everything comes out looking the exact same. It's packaged the exact same way. The experience is the exact same every single time. And in the end, we ended up selling a whole lot more, like 10x more audits, not only from the same people, or audits ordered by the same people, because they're able to sell more of them and they're able to count on things being the same, but it became a more attractive digital service or product for other folks as well, because they could see that they were going to get the same thing for a price that makes sense, and it be delivered in a way that is just more easily comprehended versus these big paragraphs which explain strategy and audit and all this. They didn't want any of that, as it turned out. And so we found out that we were very wrong.
So one of the things that comes to mind as you're saying this about sort of the repeatability is how much better your referrals could be if you just know that it's something you can promote as a value proposition, that it's the same every time, and that's the experience, that it's the same every time. To me, why do people know that they can go through the drive-through with a bunch of friends to McDonald's? It's because everyone's going to find the same thing that they usually order every single time, right? And when you make a referral, you want to make sure that you, as a referrer, are referring that new client to something that is predictable, and you can expect that your friend in their own business are going to get the same benefit that you and your business got. So if there's any variability, I have used this service or this software or this dry cleaner or whatever, and 1 time out of 10 it's just not the same, you're a lot less likely to make that referral. And it's the same for any experience software service product that we have. So this has a lot of potential influence on your virality within that community that you're seeking for your target audience.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Because when you refer someone, you're putting your name on the line, your good reputation, and that, as we know, could be lost so quickly. So,
right. Can that company deliver on the experience that you received as the referrer? So let's talk a little bit more about, how do you know when it's time to take something that seems like it's working and try and productize it? Like, is there an inflection point where there's sufficient demand to invest in, sort of the productization, or it's just a matter of efficiency and you make it easier to use over time? How soon in that sort of product's life cycle do you start developing that more formally with a standard operating procedure and more consistent mechanism?
I'm going to be super biased, but in my I've been in pretty well of the same business for the last 11 years. So I don't even remember what the world before those 11 years. So take what I have to say with a grain of salt, of course, but I think always, for every business, right away, no exceptions.
Interesting. All right. So it's not maybe as much of an investment of time and effort as we might think then. If you're starting out right away with it as a product, are you saying that it actually benefits you a lot to put in the effort upfront to write things down, create your checklist, instead of the way that a lot of us work, which is to, throw something at the wall, start working on it, and then refine it over time, maybe if you get the time?
Well, you're always going to be refining it. It's like a website. You're never done. It's a labor of love. You will never, ever be happy with your website, I don't think, or at least that's what I've found
I think that's true.
No matter with a designer, no matter what, there's always something to be done. So like that, you will always be revising it. I wouldn't think of it as some sort of scary thing, some big amount of work. I think it's scarier the further along you are. So the longer you wait to do it, the more complex everything gets. And that can be a little bit hard and a little bit taxing to, to try and create a standard operating procedure for everything you do. But I would think of it, if you're just starting, then it's a checklist. And then that checklist will grow into a checklist plus a supporting doc. And that, might grow into something a little bit more. It will evolve over time as your needs evolve and as you put more work into it. And as I've found that every new person that I run through training on these SOPs, they have different questions, and it makes me think, oh, you know what? I forgot to include that. I got to add that to the FAQ and the SOP, and I will do that all the time. But if you're already well established and now having to go back and create sort of SOPs for your entire business, which is honestly what we recently had to just redo everything, because we've been finding that at each level of growth, you have to scrap everything and start over. And what got you to, as commonly known, what got you to X is not going to get you to Y. And so we had to redo everything. And it was palatable because we broke things up into chunks. We didn't try and rebuild everything at once. We looked at, instead of thinking of the business, we thought of, okay, what are the products that make up the business? Okay. And then we took an individual product. Okay, what are the pieces of this particular product? And so we take the audit, for example. Okay, well, it has a keyword research, has a content strategy, has a content audit. Okay, let's just start with the content audit. Okay, just the content audit. Now, what are the pieces of the content audit? And it gets a little bit less scary and just less time intensive if you don't kind of look at everything super, super broadly. Now, it doesn't mean that everything shouldn't be mapped out, that you shouldn't, map out, okay, these are all the systems and processes that run my business or my department. But I mean, you could kind of create a checklist with that. What we did is we just mapped out everything, put a checkbox by each one of those different things, and slowly went through it and started at the top and said, okay, this is going to be the first one we do. And we just worked our way down over time. And it just made things that much more palatable and less scary.
So, I mean, what's interesting is that I have a direct sort of example here that's proprietary. I can't go into a ton of details, but at SMITH.AI, our receptionists use, I would say some checklists and some processes on every call to handle that conversation on behalf of a business. So one of the things that comes to mind is we invest significant time in the receptionist experience with the software they use to deliver that call properly to the caller, let's say. So are we handling that according to the business's instructions, their goals, what they would like that call result to be based on the disposition and interest of the caller? Are they a good fit for that business? Maybe it's a new lead, for example. But when we think about, okay, the receptionist utilizing that process with the structure in place, with the, the decision tree, et cetera, there are a lot of interactive features that the receptionists use. So if you have someone who is following a checklist, oftentimes there's a lot of switching, going back and forth. How do I, make sure that I don't forget to follow my checklist? Oftentimes that's where you get into sort of the user experience and buttons and, what is that workflow? Are you talking also about productizing the use by the person who's actually completing that product delivery? Or is this just the sort of formula for it as a product?
Everything. Everything. And the more we build these processes, the more we realize that everything in a business should be productized. And by that, I mean, just to give you an example, setting up an email for a new team member, productized. That deserves its own SOP, its own checklist. Everything in the business needs a process. And the idea is someone brand new to the business should be able to come on board with very little instruction, have absolutely everything they need to do, and require very little monitoring, so that you don't have to. It's not, when team members come on board, they get a buddy, but we don't want to have to assign that buddy to that person full-time or even part-time. That person should be self-sustainable from day one. And so, like, day one, what is it they do? Have that all productized. Day two, what is it they do? What does the buddy do? And basically the first 2 weeks of their role, they have step by step exactly what is expected of them and exactly what they should be able to do at each individual point. And if they can't, what do they do then? And so we haven't just thought of our products, like what we sell as a service, or we haven't just thought of templating them, processing them. It's every component of the entire business that should be productized. If somebody disappears for some reason, we have people all over the planet, and there are lots of different weather events that can lead to someone not showing up for work for whatever reason. We have a team member in Mexico, and they get heavy rain every once in a while. And by that, usually monthly, they'll get heavy rain, and the infrastructure in his area often goes down. So somebody's got to be able to step in for him. And that's possible because we have systems and processes in place for someone to be able to pick up where he left off.
So, I think that's a really important point for small business owners, because anytime you're comparing sort of the costs and benefits of being in a small business versus a larger business, one of the key inflection points is HR and training and resources. That is something that is often so well staffed in larger companies and so understaffed and underappreciated and underinvested in smaller companies. So, SMITH.AI is a startup. I've worked in startups for a long time now, and I know that the HR and training side takes a lot more time and resources and energy from the direct manager, from the teammates, from everyone who is sort of wrapping around that new team member than we like to admit, unless we invest in, sort of the SOP, those protocols for the onboarding, for the training, for a lot of that autonomous behavior that you're talking about, to relieve the burden on staff who frankly have a lot of other things that they still need to accomplish, and their goals will not wait as they scale their team. How do you efficiently bring on new people? And that might, relate to how do you onboard new clients? How do you spin up a new project for an existing client, and so on. Now, if we think back to sort of deconstructing and remixing your services to develop a product, when it comes to, client-facing, revenue-generating products, what are some examples of when you might need to deconstruct and remix something? Is there an example you can think of where, as is, it didn't work and it really needed a bit of refinement?
Yeah, I remember. I mean, the SEO audit is one example that we spoke of, where we had to basically productize it, and then we found that we could break it into pieces and serve a whole other group of SEOs that maybe didn't want the full thing, but just individual pieces of it. Because not all clients of theirs are the same, and not all clients of theirs have the exact same needs or same budget. So that was one situation where we deconstructed and sort of remixed it. Another one was we had a manual outreach service, and it was expensive because there's a lot of labor involved. But what we've been working on is selling the individual pieces of it. So with link building, there comes prospecting, which means, looking for sites to reach out to. Then there's the outreach process. Then there's the content writing for those articles that you're going to be submitting to those sites. There's sometimes a little content strategy involved. There's all these little pieces that on their own are really individual services that may serve someone better than providing the entire experience. That may not be necessary for a lot of folks, because they have different team members with different competencies, and they're looking to outsource bits and pieces of it, and they'll put it together themselves, but they don't want to do the minutia of the prospecting or the outreach or what have you. And so we're finding lots of opportunities within our existing business and our existing products to deconstruct, to break apart complex products and services and sell them individually. And what's kind of creating for us is, I kind of think of it as in my head, a lot of things look like a Trello board. Have you used Trello before?
Yep, I've used Trello and I use Clubhouse, which is very similar.
Yeah. So in Trello, you have all these little cards, I think they call them. And so I think of all these cards as individual modules, different pieces that you can mix and match in order to get what you want. So you may as an agency onboard a client, and you put together a strategy for them, and that they're going to need this module, this module, this module, and this module. We want to provide all those different modules to that agency so they can almost like sort of drag. We use sprints, Scrum at our company, and I like to imagine that the agency would then just grab all the modules they need and drag them into current sprint, and we are the current sprint. And so, in fact, we've deconstructed a lot of things to essentially provide that, to be able to provide that experience for agencies and in-house teams.
So there is an aspect of reassembling that into someone else's package or a standalone package that feels customized because of how many components can be mixed and matched within that sort of set, which is a huge benefit to anyone who you're working with that wants that customization, that curated approach, but the consistency that you can get with each individual component. So when it comes to, is it big enough to be, a component or not, a product or not? Is there a threshold where you found, look, it really has to earn you at least $500, at least, is there a price point where it makes sense? Or is there sort of an unlimited range there?
Our first product, as I mentioned, was email addresses, and they sold for $1 a piece, 10 and packages of 10, so $10. And as long as it was profitable, it made sense. Now the business was in its infancy at that time, so we would kind of do, well, I would kind of do whatever in order to pay my bills at the time. But strangely, not all that much changed. I found that those products ended up being the best tripwire for other products. The $7 audit, as I mentioned, sold tens of thousands of these. Heck, we may be possibly beyond 100,000 at this point. I don't even know. And so long as it's profitable, which it is, and heck, even if you're just breaking even, it's a way for folks to engage with you, your team, your products, and for the first time. And it's a way for them to kind of get to know you a little bit. It's a warm handshake, if you will. And and it's an opportunity, well, to get them on your email list, for example, to share other services, complementary services. It's an opportunity to say, okay, well, this is what's next. This is what folks would generally order next, which might be a citation build or what have you. So no, I don't think there's too big or too small. I don't think necessarily one is necessarily more difficult than another. Each serves its purpose.
Well, and the question is, how much time is spent getting that purchase to be made. If you already have a relationship, it's easy to, share other services, maybe even link to them, have someone read about them and sign up. Or does it require another sales call and technical onboarding and things like that, which would be, obviously more of an investment of time. One of the things that you're making me think of is our chatbot. We have a white glove set up for it. And that service is something that we waive for existing virtual receptionist clients. It's worth $150, but for an existing client, you get it for free. But the huge benefit is actually when we have times where we can waive that service fee for a brand new client who's only using the free chatbot. There's no expectation of recurring revenue there, but they get that chat widget on their site completely customized. And it is very much a specialist who has built hundreds, if not 1,000 chatbots at this point, who knows exactly how to set it up. And he is basically, a big part of the product, and he and his team create that. So it's working with the existing system in that framework, knowing that there is a recipe, so to speak, and how to translate that recipe based on, well, do you want, a 3-layer cake or a 2-layer cake? All right, we're going to need to do this differently, right? Do you want it frosted or not? Okay, much the same thing happens when you're building a website. Give that example, you're creating that citation audit. What are your inputs and what is the expected output? It's a law firm website. It's an agency website. There's mostly new leads or mostly support tickets. That chatbot's going to serve a specific purpose. And then there are other sort of, sideline purposes. So yeah, that seems to me, just another example of service that's basically productized. There's an intake form, gathers all the information that team needs to build, customize, color, brand, etc., that chat widget. Now, when it comes to, standard operating procedures and protocol, but then also the tech behind this, Adam, like one of the things that, we have on our agenda to discuss, and I want to make sure there's room for that, is what tech stack do you need to actually run this? And, understanding that not everyone's going to create their own software from scratch for this, what can support the growth here?
Yeah, I believe our first dashboard, so sort of place where folks would log in and be able to purchase our services, was custom built. And it served its purpose. It helped us grow. It provided a lot of good for us. However, it also was not without a lot of pain, a lot of growing pain, without incredible expense, or at least it was certainly relatively expensive relative to how much we were making and all of that. And so looking back on it, I wish I would have found an off-the-shelf version of what we tried to build. And back then, maybe there wasn't a lot, and that's why I had to do what I had to do. But nowadays, I've seen, at least in our space, there are a lot of existing software as a service dashboards for folks to sell just about anything in it, whether it be a course or a digital product or whatever it may be. There seems to be a lot of options out there, and a lot of options with a great deal of ability to customize them to your specific needs. So before going to build something, I would, I wish I had reached out to my competitors and asked what they were using. I don't know if it was pride or what it was, but I bet you if I had done that, I probably would have found our current the current software that we use a lot sooner, and we would have been a lot better off for it. So I would look for something on the shelf, so to speak, first before trying to do anything custom. Because more times than not, I think nowadays something does exist for your problem, or something close exists, and you can kind of massage what you do a little bit to fit inside their software. Because it's not everybody can build software. Not everybody can lead hire a developer and lead that developer to success. It's not an easy thing to do without some sort of coding knowledge and project management experience, and sort of understanding of what is good and what is bad, some understanding of user interfaces and user experience. And there's just so much involved. And I was very naive at that point. And so I thought I could do anything. And I'm glad I am that way in sometimes, but it doesn't come cheaply, as I found.
So one of the things that we've found is, using products like, Airtable and Notion, and even, maybe DataBox or Data Studio. What are some of the platforms specifically that you would recommend looking at to start with?
Well, it certainly depends on what it is that you're trying to sell. So if you're there are a lot of companies that have sprung up around courses and educational material, but those same software solutions, be it something like Udemy or something like
Thinkific and
Thinkific was the next one I was going to say. Yeah, a lot of them don't necessarily need to be strictly they could be for any sort of informational product that you wish to sell. So there are just so many markets and industries out there that it would be sort of hard to rattle off all the different ones that exist out there, but I'm sure a quick Google search would reveal if there's any in your space, whether you're selling digital products or informational products, or maybe there's many businesses that are using Shopify, of course, and it doesn't need to be strictly for physical goods, as I understand it. Right. You can use it for a lot of things. So
what happened with Etsy, downloadable templates for your chicken coop, right? Like there's for your sewing pattern, for your garage. there are downloadable templates for a lot of things that are basically DIY now, which is very interesting. And they come with the, Thinkific or Udemy or YouTube channel to, help you use those templates. But it's a very smart business model and obviously highly scalable. You build it and then it's downloadable from now to, forever.
Yeah.
So,
and you don't need to get too fancy either. Many of us know that Airbnb started on Craigslist.
Yeah.
They've got their first, I don't know how many customers on Craigslist. So there is a platform for you to to build your sort of minimum viable product and get it out there in front of people.
Really, really, really good point. So when it comes to, and just like sort of wrapping up here, this will be the last question, and then I want to give you time to just, introduce Loganics again and the range of services that you offer and how people can get in touch with you. But the last question is around sort of the command center and visibility monitoring as a manager or business owner, or at least department head where these products live. How do you have visibility and control, maybe through other software solutions and protocols?
We, at one period of time, thought and it was me, really, I'll take the blame for this. I thought I had to have this fancy control center built out in Data Studio, or using one of the many really great reporting softwares out there. I'm trying to think of some of the ones I tried. Tableau, for example, which was incredibly expensive and unnecessary for us. I read this book called 1 Minute Manager, and it outlined a process whereby your reports could tell you the sort of the bare minimum that you need to know to sort of run your business. And so we started implementing this across Slack. And so my team members will, as an example, every week report on numbers, how many things were ordered, how many things were delivered on time, how many things were delivered overdue, why were they delivered overdue? And so I'll get essentially a weekly update on all of that, which has been helpful. It's nothing fancy, but it gives me just the basic stuff that I need to know at a glance in the place that I am most commonly in. I'm in Slack all day long. Now it is supported by a Google Sheet where these same numbers exist with a little bit more context, but I generally don't need that. And if I do, it's there, and I can go there as well and get a little bit more information before I start bugging people for questions. What I don't want is to have these big conversations to distract people from their work, to derail them from whatever it is that they're doing. That's not necessary. I'm going to forget to ask for updates. They're going to forget to give me them. If I just give them this sort of very templated approach to reporting to me, it then doesn't require me to have these 30-minute, 1-hour conversations every single week to get the exact same information that I care about. So it turned out it didn't have to be as fancy as I thought it would be. And so that's how we did it. And we do it with everything from, the products we sell to what somebody on my team does in a day. So they might, when they log on in the morning and when they log off, they'll tell me, what they did yesterday, if applicable, what they're going to do today, and what challenges they've met or foresee meeting. And that third one is for me. It's my job to remove hurdles for them, to remove anything that gets in their way. And again, nothing all that fancy, it's just a message. And I've had other folks tell me they did that in email format. But that's all we do. And it works for our business.
Great. Well, I mean, that could be a whole nother webinar just on, automating team management and increasing productivity. Sure. But that's a great example, and I'm sure a benefit to many who are sort of watching this with us. So Adam, how can people find you, and what's the best next step to even explore if Loganics is potentially a really good fit or service provider, product provider for their business?
So you can find me at Loganics.com. You can send me an email at adam@Loganics.com. And you are more than welcome to book a strategy call with me via Loganics.com/book-me. And that'll get you my calendar, and we can have a chat and see if Loganics is a good fit for your agency or marketing team.
Wonderful. All right. Well, Adam, thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you today, and always a great conversation. Thanks for sharing a little bit around building these products and operations that can scale. I think that's top of mind for every savvy business owner right now. So I look forward to the next time that we get to do this together.
Likewise, Maddy. Thank you for your wonderful questions. You certainly carried me today, so I appreciate it.
My pleasure as always. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.
See ya. Bye-bye.
Bye.